So here's like, well, so essentially, if our government stumbles across people that they can't prevent them being tortured into suicide, basically, if all avenues fail, the Second Amendment allows for a well-regulated militia. What that means is essentially a military force that sits in waiting, not actively engaged in any type of illegal warfare or anything, but that is regulated and kept from doing. And so a militia is a military force raised by the civilian population to supplement the regular army. So if our federal government is not able to prevent that type of stuff, that becomes an emergency situation that then gives a well-regulated civilian population raised militia the ability to supplement with the federal government as necessary to the security of a free state. And so this is essentially where there's potentials for the militia to be stepping in where the federal government is not able to prevent, basically, to be supplementing with when the emergency and when they're not able to prevent that type of stuff. The Second Amendment shall not be infringed upon. This is where, if our federal government is not able to keep people from torturing, from murdering people with sound, then those people in ways are allowed to raise a militia that then supplements in the militarized methodologies that the army seems to be failing at. That is where people that are on the brink of suicide from this sound torture are in an emergency situation. If the federal government essentially is not able to prevent that emergency situation, potentially there's a potential for usage of a civilian raised militia doing what is necessary to establish security as pertains to the emergency situation, to guarantee a free state. In a free state, if your laws in your free country and if your military in your free country are not able to maintain life and liberty, then the Second Amendment, which shall not be infringed, is placed as a right for the free people to be basically raising a militia that reestablishes life and liberty. And so that's kind of where, in ways, the list, once exhausted, then this is a potential avenue for these. And this would be somewhat of the theoretical lawful argument, and that if it was pushed out through the military, essentially, in an emergency situation, there might be a need for a supplemental militia to be reestablishing the free state as necessary for security. And so that's essentially where most people have a comprehension of the Second Amendment under guns and stuff. But essentially, this type of situation, or this type of theoretical idea, is essentially at the core of what the Second Amendment is about. It is a Bill of Rights. It shall not be infringed. And that it's based on ideas like this. And that a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. And so, essentially, it potentially is an extra avenue that if a civilian free man was able to raise a militia, then potentially that militia could execute those people. Right? So this is essentially this is essentially the rights of a free citizen in our country. And you see, torturing somebody into suicide infringes on their constitutionally given right to life and liberty, which is what the whole fucking thing is for. And so this would be essentially, this would be theoretically the correct usage of this amendment. And so, and the word shall means that it cannot ever, it means that it's set in stone. It means that there's no real executive order or any ability to be preventing it. And that's what the word shall represents. And so, basically, there's no real ability for the executive branch to potentially prevent this type of situation based on the word shall. Any executive order that pushes away from a civil population raising a militia to be reestablishing life is potentially a voidable executive order. That kind of means these passes or something like that type of stuff. And so, essentially, since modern warfare has turned into sound torture and text speakers, a well-regulated militia that then has a civilian having their life, the security of their life, so essentially this could theoretically be a way to use the dumb ghouls. There's a civilian population known as people who have tech speakers that are being tortured into suicide. And that theoretically those people as one entity have raised a regulated militia to supplement the failures of the military or the executive enforcement branch. See, an emergency represents a breakdown of their God-given rights, so to speak, life. And so, all these people are basically waiting for is like a guarantee not to be thrown in a prison for getting rid of the people that are doing that stuff. Okay? That's what they're looking for. They know the amount of corruption, they know the amount of people who don't follow any fucking laws, they know all of that. They want a guarantee. There's potentials for an executive order that could potentially be justified in these ways, that then could pass down a guarantee written from the seat, from the top, not in weird ghost believey ways, in a real concrete paper signature fucking way. Once they get that guarantee that their Second Amendment ability of being a raised militia by a civilian population, once they're given their guarantees in a real fucking law way, they are fully ready to essentially erase this issue. Okay? Right? And so that is essentially where a lot of times people miss out that in ways, whatever anybody's doing, there's theoretically always some sort of Bill of Rights ability of fixing things. Basically. And so this is the kind of stuff that, yeah, it's like in the past, this would have been some of the arguments that would have been kind of used in the past, basically. And that those people in the past, some of them were getting people that were just FBI agents that would wait for them to do that, and then they would just arrest them. Even though they were using this type of argument, basically. And so that's where it's been a lot of the rise of this issue comes from those FBI agents arresting those people utilizing this theoretical argument. And that's the kind of stuff that nowadays they literally kind of expect some sort of direct court of law guarantee. And so that is essentially, well, I just wonder what our federal government plans on doing about people who have sat around for like 7 years being constantly sound tortured into suicide. I wonder what they're going to do to be preventing that. I wonder what they're going to do to be preventing people taking their own life out of a horrible, murderous methodology. Because essentially, those people should be able to raise a militia that kills those people for doing that. Right? See, if somebody starts shooting guns at me, I'm allowed to shoot back. If somebody raises some sort of theoretical militia or something at me, I'm theoretically able to build my own against them. And here's a different theoretical idea. If they're trying to torture people into suicide, then the Second Amendment guarantees their ability to fight back. And then your stupid FBI agents were going around arresting all the fucking guys and shit. So, that's kind of shit. That essentially, you know, those people that are doing that stuff have such a hardened corruption world that they're doing that stuff in, that essentially it reaches all the way down to what used to minimize that type of shit. And that in the past, those military guys would be utilizing this. And that's basically where that's where there's theoretically a different path that has to come from a different angle to be shoving back in. And that my thought is that if you know who the dumb ghouls are, to just be flying in, handing them a golden gun and a CIA badge and giving them a license to kill under the parameters of the emergency. Basically. And then just letting the cards fall where they fall.